young white man is sitting at a white desk. In front of him is a light grey DeckStation 5000/200 computer and a black microphone. Simple melody plays. He begins tapping out a rhythm on the desk with his hands. As he modifies his tempo, the system responds. He is improvising. The machine is listening. Is the man playing the computer like an instrument? Or is he playing with the computer, as in a duet? Is he even playing at all? The man appears slightly bored, pretending not to be aware of his own performance, exploring the limited freedom offered to him by the machine, which tirelessly repeats the melody again and again, infinitely. We are watching a breakthrough moment in human-computer interaction. The computer is doing what the man wants, but still, the man can only want what the machine can do. The fantasy of easy, natural interface between man and computer is captured in a diagram by Andrei Yershov in 1964, titled The Director-Agent Model of Interaction. The man is meant to be in charge. But look at the diagram. We can start anywhere we like. Information cycles around and around in a constant state of transformation from sound to voltage to coloured light to wet synapses. All of these possibilities are contained in the schematic figure of the arrow, which is the director here, and which the agent. The diagram itself cycled between the pages of different publications, including The Architecture Machine, a 1970 book by Nicholas Negroponte. Negroponte had set up the Architecture Machine Group at MIT in 1967, which eventually led to his creation of the MIT Media Lab. A state-of-the-art light grey machine is sitting on a white desk. A camera is pointed at it, focused on it. The camera zooms out to reveal a young white man. Why are we seeing this moment? Why is the camera there to witness it? Judging by the DeckStation, the year is probably 1992 or 93. The location is definitely the MIT Media Lab, and we are looking through a small window into the demo or die culture that Negroponte famously instigated there. Demos could excite the general public and impress important visitors. They could attract corporate and government money. The colossal machine listening apparatus that we know today has its roots in thousands of demos like this one. In the 80s and 90s, the demo was a prefigurative device, also familiar to the music world. This man, like many of those he worked with, moved between these worlds. He was an engineer, but also a musician. He had come to MIT, in fact, for a PhD in the Music and Cognition Group at the Experimental Music Studio, which had been founded by the composer Barry Vercoe in 1973 and was absorbed into the Media Lab from the very start in 1985. One of the first students to join this group was another musician engineer named Robert Rowe. Rowe's doctoral thesis, Machine Listening and Composing, Making Sense of Music with Cooperating Real-Time Agents, seems to be one of the earliest uses of the phrase machine listening in print. The primary goal of this thesis, Rowe writes, has been to fashion a computer program able to listen to music. The term machine listening would go on to be taken up widely in computer music circles, following the publication of a book based on Rowe's thesis in 1994. 1994 was also the year the Music and Cognition Group rebranded.
I've been unhappy with Music and Cognition for some time. It's not even supposed to describe our group. It was the name of a larger entity, including Barry, Todd, Marvin, Ken, and Patty, that was dissolved almost 2 years ago. But I've shied away from the issue for fear of something worse. I like machine listening a lot. I've also thought about auditory processing, and I try to get the second floor to describe my demos as machine audition. I'm not sure the precise shades of connotation of the different words, except I'm pretty confident that having music in the title has a big impact on people's preconceptions, one I'd rather overcome.
So what began for Rowe as a term to describe the so-called analytic layer of an interactive music system became the name of a new research group at MIT, and something of a catch-all to describe diverse forms of emerging computational auditory analysis, increasingly involving big data and machine learning techniques. As the term wound its way through computer music literature, it also followed researchers at MIT as they left, finding its way into funding applications and the vocabularies of new centres at new institutions. Here is one such application by a professor at Columbia named Dan Ellis. This is the man sitting at the desk and the author of the email we just read. Today, he works at Google for their sound understanding team. As Stuart Brand once put it, the world of the Media Lab and the Media Lab of the world are busily shaping each other. Google's sound understanding team is responsible, amongst other things, for AudioSet, a collection of over 2 million 10-second YouTube excerpts, totaling some 6,000 hours of audio, all labelled with a vocabulary of 527 sound event categories. AudioSet's purpose is to train Google's deep learning systems in the vast and expanding YouTube archive so that eventually it will be able to, quote, label hundreds or thousands of different sound events in real-world recordings with a time resolution better than 1 second, just as human listeners can recognise and relate the sounds they hear. AudioSet includes 7,000 examples tagged classical music, nearly 5,000 of jazz, some 3,000 examples of accordion music, and another 3,000 files tagged music of Africa. There are 6,000 videos of exciting music and 1,737 that are labelled scary. In AudioSet's ontology, human sounds, for instance, is broken down into categories like respiratory sounds, human group action, heartbeats, and of course, speech, which can be shouted, screamed, or whispered. AudioSet includes 1,500 examples of crumpling and crinkling, 127 examples of toothbrushing, 4,000 gunshots, and 8,500 sirens. This is the world of machine listening we inhabit today, distributed across proliferating smart speakers, voice assistants, and other interactive listening systems that attempts to understand and analyse not just what we say, but how and where we say it, along with the sonic and musical environments that we move through and are moved by. Machine listening is not only becoming ubiquitous, but increasingly omnivorous. Jessica Feldman's essay, The Problem of the Adjective, describes a further frontier. Effective listening software tunes into barely perceptible vocal inflections, which are uncontrollable, unintended, and habitual, but for the machine signify the, quote, emotions, intentions, desires, fears of the speaker. In short, the soul. Can the machine listen to our soul? Of course not. But what does it hear? What does it do when it tries? And how will we act when confronted with an instrument intent on listening so deeply?
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to Machine Listening, Improvisation and Control. It's really fantastic that so many of you have made it tuned in on whatever platform. My name is James. I'm James Parker. I'm an academic based at Melbourne Law School and one of the curatorial team for this particular project. Can I ask you to come back, Joel, if you've had time to recover from...
Hello.
Yeah, thanks. Look, before we get into it, we both want to begin by acknowledging that we're speaking, sort of broadcasting from Naarm, Melbourne, on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We also want to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So This particular event or this broadcast is part of Free Jazz 3, which is a program put on by the Center for Contemporary Art at NTU Singapore. We wanted to say, a big thank you to the CCA, and in particular, Magdalena Magiera, who has curated Free Jazz 3, but also everybody else there, Dr. Karina, the deputy director there, and Uta Metabauer, the deputy director as well. So they're going to say a few words at the end. But the other kind of context for this broadcast is a broader project. Sean sneaking into the window there. Sean is the third and final member of the curatorial team for a bigger project called Machine Listening, a Curriculum, which began last year at Unsound Festival, who are also partners on this evening's events. There's many thank yous. We put on 3 sessions sort of similar to this one there, and produced a kind of resource that you're welcome. We strongly invite you to go and explore online. We don't want to take too much time explaining that project, but we're going to sort of share some links in the chat window, and we sort of invite everybody to use that chat window kind of quite freely. Maybe say where you're tuning in from, have a bit of a chat, have a bit of a kind of commentary on what's going on. Joel, do you want to maybe say a few words about what's coming up?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's very nice to be here with you all. And thanks for tuning in. So we're going to, this session, which we've titled Improvisation and Control, for reasons which should, already be sort of becoming clear from that first section and become more clear over the course of the next couple of hours. It's going to comprise a whole lot of performances and presentations and media works by artists from around the world. We'll be introducing them and acknowledging them as the works flow through. But we're going to be going for, I'd say, about between 2.5 and 3 hours. So we think of this as a bit like a kind of audio-visual radio show, a sort of long form, and we'll be moving through brackets of different works, as well as some framing kind of research essays of which the first one you've just witnessed. So I guess we'll give more context as we go along, but I hope you can stay with us over the next couple of hours on Zoom. As James said, feel free to use the chat to let us know what you think, or to ask any questions or make comments. I know that many of you are also watching on Facebook and YouTube, and this broadcast will be archived there. So if you have to leave at any time, you can always come back and watch it again later. So maybe, James, I'll hand it back over to you to introduce the next artist, Jessica.
Yeah, thanks. You heard Joel mention a great artist and academic called Jessica Feldman at the end of his his opening bit there. Hi, Jessica. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Now, we've already spoken before. We recorded a fantastic interview, which is up on the Machine Listening website, actually, with yourself and a number of other academics and artists. But, what we first came across your work because of this essay that you'd written on affective computing, and specifically a kind of a range of apps and applications that applying affective computing to the speaking voice. And it's sort of heady stuff. It's to me, like a slightly kind of scary proposition. But you're better placed to speak about it than me. Could I ask you to sort of introduce these apps, and then maybe say a few words about the work that's kind of grown out of them?
Sure. Well, first thing I want to say is thank you all for organizing this. And I just want to say it's really wonderful to have artists asking these questions, as well as academics and engineers. So I think it's really cool. So thanks for all your work on this. I also wanted to thank Joel for answering the question about whether a machine can listen to our soul. Glad to know that it can't. Yeah, so the article that you referenced and so the piece I'm going to present today are sort of both dealing with these emerging technologies, maybe emerging over the past 10 years or so, that listen to the voice and try to determine affect or emotion or psychological state or trustability. Also, like a rather wide range of unquantifiable characteristics or states. And what the thing that they're doing is they're listening to sort of the sonic, the contours of the voice, the intonation, the rhythms, pitch changes, the rate at which your voice is warbling, these sort of traditionally musical qualities to the voice. And from that data, they make claims about your affect. So in my research, I was sort of interested in both how they were, what sounds they were looking for, but also what kind of rubrics of the human psyche or soul or emotional mechanism they were imagining, because I think that is quite important in terms of how we're going to be conditioned by the machines. Like, what are they listening for in us? So, I won't get too deeply into the article, but mostly what the article was looking at were these, was this software that tries to determine emotion, which is now being used mainly for enterprise and security purposes, for in commercial call centers, sometimes in like health insurance claims to try to determine if you're nervous about your claim. Sometimes it's being used for law enforcement to try to determine if someone is nervous about, whatever it is that they're claiming to be true. And more recently, what we're seeing, of course, is a move to AI. So it's sort of a switch from trying to, all this data has been gathered to try to describe our emotional state via the inflections of the voice. And now we're seeing voices being made that try to mimic those states. So that's kind of the software that I worked with for this piece. Yeah, and I don't know, should I keep going or
you've got some really, I think that it'd be great for people to sort of see some of the images that you prepared, the patents and things, because look, I've said it before, but I was struck by this point in your paper where you describe one company beyond verbal that's has this kind of wild imagination. It says, you write there, 2011 patent includes rubrics for relating both vocal pitch and intervallic patterns to emotional attitudes. For example, the pitch of C is associated with the need for activity and survival, whereas E is associated with self-control and B with command and leadership. So, they're saying this out loud in the patterns, and I just, it's such a sort of a strange and interesting phenomenon to me. And it would be great if you could walk us through some of that and maybe just introduce the work.
Sure. Well, I just shared my screen. This is from another patent with another company, but let me go back and respond kind of quickly to what you just said. Maybe someone can even share a link to the article in the chat.
Yeah, we have done. Yeah.
Oh, great. Cool. The beyond verbal patent, it's kind of crazy. It's claiming that really specific pitches, sort of Western tuning pitches, correlate directly with specific affects. Obviously, both the language that we use to describe affect and the Western tuning system are completely constructed. So the claim that this is somehow like natural to all human beings makes no sense. And you wonder why you'd put it in a patent unless you just need to get a patent for some reason. which is probably what happened, because I believe what these companies went on to do is they built sort of apps more for, for your phone to test your feelings or for children to play with. Then they trained it on real user feedback, and now those apps are gone, basically. And I think they've probably kind of changed their rubric a little bit. But the original premise was quite crazy and doesn't work with tonal languages like Chinese, and really has a lot to do with particular cultural trainings that we come from in the West, where these things are being invented. So that's the beyond verbal one is pretty nuts. This one that I'm showing right now, this is from a different patent from a company called AGI. And they're doing this affect recognition stuff, but part of what they're doing is also really describing their idea of the way the affects and feelings kind of relate to each other. And if I recall correctly, later on in the patent, they even have a flowchart of how, if you're expressing one emotion, you'll probably be moving next to this other emotion, which will then lead you into a third state. And it really, describes a computerized way of thinking.
So puzzlement is next to anxiety, and dependence is close to follow-up, which isn't far from jealousy.
No, I know. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So I just got really fascinated by these things kind of as creative objects, and was interested in the way they, reflect the way we think about ourselves. Because I think every time we look at an AI or we look at computers, we are learning something about the way we imagine the human mind to work as well. So anyway, for this project, I was kind of working with some other artists here. I'm living in an artist residency in Paris right now, and have this great privilege of being together with other people. So we have this opportunity to kind of actually be co-present, and the claim about affect is that it's the original sort of like behavioral science claims about affect is that they're transmitted, from body to body. It's the same as But's claim about the voice. And so I was kind of curious about like what happens when you mix the machine in there. So I got together a few other artists here, and we started vocalizing together, and then we started vocalizing with the software. And the first thing I did was I made these sort of weird little scores, and I'm explaining all of this because I think it makes more sense when you listen to the sounds. So I made these scores of emotions. So this was a more linear score where there are five different lines that you can kind of move yourself through as you're vocalizing. And we'll hear a duet, or rather a trio, because there's also a computer involved in a little bit from this score. And we tried that out, and we made some recordings together and alone, trying to see how our vocalizing affected each other. And then I made another one, basically that was less linear and drew a bit on that patent. And what we did in the process of this piece is we had the first recordings, and then I took them and put them through this software, which I'll show you a screenshot right now. So this is this, I'll just explain the software really quickly. This is this sort of openly available software from IRCAM, which is the audio research lab kind of run by France, sort of famous for some of its innovations in like MaxMS. They designed MaxMSP. They're doing a lot of interesting machine listening stuff right now. And this is basically a software that changes your voice to different moods. And you can kind of see here that Like right now I have selected happy, and what it does is it like increases the pitch a little bit. It makes some inflections in all of your articulations. It puts a particular filter on your voice. And it's a bit uncanny, actually. So you can just download that from the Earcom website and play with it in Max, which is what I did. So we took our original recordings and ran them through David, and then basically did a improv with that to try. And the goal was to see kind of like, how do the affects coming out of this machine affect the way we're expressing ourselves? Like, how are we interacting with this? And is it affecting us, or are we just listening to each other? I'm not sure of the answer yet, but I think it's affecting us. So this is what I've been working with right now. And yeah, is there more?
Yeah, let's listen to them.
Okay. Cool.
I think that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me discuss it. Oh, and you know what, before I do anything, let me just really quickly share the names of my collaborators here in the chat.
We can do that. I've got them right here, all handy. All
okay,
good.
Great.
Okay, fire away, Lauren.
Cool. So thank you for sharing that. So that was a little excerpt of some of the stuff we were sort of improvising against. And maybe you can hear in there some relics of the software. It's just on the verge of kind of recognizability, I think. And so the piece that has emerged from this, which is really more like a documentation of an improvisation, we'll play that now. And it's you know, 4 female vocalists kind of responding to the score, to this, you know, recording with David, and to each other. Yeah, it's a black video like we just saw before. And I just recommend, you know, turning up the volume and getting into it if you can. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was extraordinary to listen to. I found it very emotionally ambiguous in a way. If only there was some sort of computer algorithm or application that could, help interpret it for me. That would be incredibly useful.
Yeah, indeed. It's so much work to actually do that kind of listening, I think.
Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's very early where you are. And I was also sort of interpreting some of those sounds as early morning yawns. But that was great. That was really, really enjoyable. I'd like to invite Luca Lum to join us now. And bye-bye, Jessica. And welcome, Luca.
Hey, guys.
Hello, Luca's joining us from Singapore, and we're so happy to have you here in the program. I'll just briefly say that Luca's an artist and writer and researcher, and with a really diverse practice encompassing writing and performance and installation and all sorts of different kinds of work. Focusing on themes of intimacy, exchange, media, and infrastructure. And we've been having a lot of conversations over the last few weeks about this program, and you've created a new work for us. So I'm really excited to now hand it over to you. And I believe that before we go into the work, we're going to conduct a little experiment and invite a little participation from the audience who's tuned in with us today. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I will just talk a bit about the work and then I'll queue up the small participation.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Joel. I'm really excited to be here and to present a score to a video called Notes Towards a Subtle Body. The work is linked to an ongoing project and loosely to another project that I'm showing in the summer in Iceland. Just before the score starts, you will all, audience at large, receive a request from Liquid Architecture to unmute your mics. For about 30 seconds, I ask that everyone leave their mic on. There's no speaking, just registering everyone's presences, listening to the air. When 30 seconds is up, the mics will be turned off and we will begin. The score asks for your full-bodied attention and participation in whatever way you see fit. You will perform the score largely to yourself or incidentally to whoever or whatever is in your presence with you. Okay, take it away, Lauren.
lesson of sensation, something almost social, something like a good meaning. Is this what it means to become many subtle bodies, full of vital flow? It's the body doubles that describe body aligns its heaviness too poorly. The body scans its confines. The rapture of to be both weighted and projected outwards. To be both standing on a toe up and to remove it or extrude it, to let ourselves fall into some other ways. In pain, in friction, the body doubles. In friction, body aligns but also large mouth pleasure. Body scans its confines. Enlarged ear, listening. How to be both full-bodied, both weighted and projected outwards. To be both standing on a toe up and to remove it or extrude it. It's not over. To let ourselves fall into intimacy. Enlarged ear, listening. In full-bodied feeling. It's not always about intimacy with an impossible landscape. Perhaps it's about the double drawing a line, passing through the whole of distance. Double agent. It is not about how much a voice can contain, but how much a voice can hold its shape. Desire is ontological. Every story should have an aspiration to stop the world from closing in. Run the track enough and you'll get something almost social, something like a convening. It is not trust in your father can contain, but how much a voice can. The doubled voice, the double agent, looping images here, but they feel impossible. Desire is ontological. They do not want this. Desire is ontological. To be both standing on a toe, we should have to remove it or extrude it, to let ourselves fall into some other ways. In pain, in friction, the body doubles. In friction, body aligns but also large mouth pleasure. Body scans its confines. Enlarged ear. Passed the cemetery several times without looking. I am preparing the face for speaking. I am before the appearance of speech. I passed the cemetery several times without looking. I am preparing the face for speaking. I am before the appearance of speech. To the sound in the distance. I passed the cemetery several times without looking. I am preparing the face for speaking. voice can never form by no occupancy. The soul searches for a place. A voice can never form by no occupancy. My narrative is your stranglehold. There is a double spooking the world. The double of abstraction. The soul searches for the throat tightens. History doesn't disappear overnight. Everyone loves a comeback kid. There is a double spooking the world. The double of abstraction. The throat tightens. The throat tightens. There are images here, but they feel impossible. They do not want to circus. History is the border. The throat tightens. The doubled void, the doubled voice, the double agent, looping. There are images here, but they feel
A young black man is sitting at a white desk. In front of him is a bank of Apple II computers connected to a trio of Yamaha DX7 synthesizers and 4 performers on stage. A woman playing an upright bass starts strumming out a rhythm, and the system responds. Then the soprano sax, followed by the rest of the ensemble. They are improvising. The machine is listening. The machine is improvising. They are listening. This is the 1984 premiere of George Lewis's Rainbow Family at Ercan, Paris, then as now a global center for avant-garde composition, computer music, and electroacoustic research. Robert Rowe spent time there in the 1980s, and Lewis would perform at the debut of Rowe's interactive music system, Cypher, at MIT in 1988. The concert was called Hyper Instruments. But this is the first of Lewis's interactive virtual orchestra pieces, in which software designed by Lewis both responds to the sounds of the human performers and operates independently, according to its own internal processes. There is no score, and Lewis is not, in the language of European art music, the piece's composer. Instead, Rainbow Family comprises, quote, multiple parallel streams of music generation, emanating from both the computers and the humans, non-hierarchical, improvisational, subject-to-subject model of discourse. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate aesthetic, technical, and political strategy by Lewis to produce a kind of computer music making embodying African-American aesthetics and musical practices, a form of human-computer collaboration embodying similar ideals to those of the African-American Musicians Collective, AACM, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians. The group was founded in Chicago in 1965, and for Paul Steinbeck, it remains the most significant collective organization in the history of jazz and experimental music. Lewis would later call this AACM-inspired aesthetic multi-dominance. The idea is developed from an essay by the artist and critic Robert L. Douglas. Lewis writes, by way of introduction to his theory, Douglas recalls from his art student days that interviews with most African-American artists with Eurocentric art training will reveal that they received similar instructions, such as tone down your colors, too many colors. Apparently, these helpful pedagogical interventions were presented as somehow universal and transcendent, rather than as emanating from a particular culturally or historically situated worldview, or as based in networks of political or social power. Douglas, in observing that, quote, such culturally narrow aesthetic views would have separated us altogether from our rich African heritage if we had accepted them without question, goes on to compare this aspect of Eurocentric art training to Eurocentric music training, which in his view does not equip its students to hear music with multi-dominant rhythmic and melodic elements as anything but noise, frenzy, or perhaps chaos. When we listen to Rainbow Family then, Lewis doesn't want us to hear synchronicity, harmony, or even polyphony. He wants us to hear multi-dominance as both an aesthetic and a political value, expressed and encapsulated now, partly as code. This is a model of human-computer interaction premised on formal equality, difference, independence, and commonality of purpose. A system that is, Lewis explains, happy to listen to you and dialogue with you, or sometimes ignore you. But the conceptual aspect of it is that it's pretty autonomous, You can't tell it what to do. So improvisation becomes a negotiation where you have to work with the system rather than just be in control. We're a long way from Yershoff and his director-agent model of interaction here. Lewis again. In African-American music, there is always an instrumentality connected with sounds. You make sounds for pedagogical purposes, to embody history or to tell stories and so on. If Rainbow Family is pedagogy, then its lesson is surely that computers, and machine listeners in particular, are part of these stories too. That they already were as early as the 1980s. What is being contested, in fact, is machine listening's soul, the aesthetic and political ideals it both expresses and reproduces, years before the term first began to circulate at and around MIT. What would an alternate machine listening system modeled along Lewis's lines be like? The becoming rainbow family of the world as rainbow family, in which the interdependence of man and machine is acknowledged and embraced, but also rooted in a concern for racial justice and traditions of Afrofuturism. How might this idea of multi-dominance play out at scale, laced through our homes and cities? How would such a world be designed? How compatible would it be with the current regime of pervasive surveillance, data extraction and colonialism, capital accumulation, automation and control? What social relations would a system like this work to facilitate and produce? What would it sound like? And what risks would it too run?
Thank you very much, James. And I can still hear a bit of George Lewis Rainbow Family there. You're tuned into machine listening, improvisation, and control. My name is Joel Stern, one of the hosts, and we'll be with you for another hour and a half or so with a number more artists and their works to come. Very happy now to introduce Matin, who's joining us from Berlin. Matin, if I could invite you to turn your camera on. Welcome. Very nice to see you. Oh, having a bit of trouble hearing you there, Matin.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. You could maybe be a little bit louder, but I think we've got you.
Okay, I'll try to speak a bit louder.
There we are. There we are. Very nice to see you, bright and early in Berlin.
Yeah, very, very nice. I'm really enjoying so far the program. Very inspiring and learning a lot. I was just like going crazy looking for George Lewis music, and yeah, very inspiring indeed. For my intervention, I propose to do a collective improvisation, taking as a starting point the control settings of Zoom. So this is an instructional score that will go into the chat, which everybody will be able to follow. And I will also read it, and it will last basically. So my intervention will last 15 minutes in total, and it requires your participation if you are willing to participate. You are now invited to turn on your microphone.
No, he said.
You are invited to turn on your camera. The administrator will add you as a panelist. If you are wearing headphones, please remove them. And click on the Zoom microphone icon and make sure the output is set to a speaker. Click on the audio settings, which they are in the microphone icon. And there, go to adjust your microphone input level and your speaker output level. Increase them both until you feel you are at the verge of feedback without actually feedbacking.
Input level.
Okay.
And click the setting automatically adjust microphone volume.
You're in Zoom.
And in the settings, supreme the setting, change from low to medium to high
Really?
to auto.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
Now, improvise with the control.
Speaking. Hello.
Hi, Dad. Daddy, Dad. I did this. Got the fire.
It's on face.
I love sailing. Okay. I can't see bees. House too. Oh yeah. That's the house. Live in me. I miss my dad, Mom. I miss my dad. Mom, I miss my dad. I miss my. What did Dad did? What did Dad did?
Gimana tuh?
Can't see my dad.
Wiesz, wydarzenia inne, nie? Się łączą z różnych... Łączyć ze swoją energią.
And now he wants the doggy treat for baby. That noise. He got baby panda a special treat. That. He got baby panda a special treat for baby panda. It's a bar and when he is dead. Who is that man? Who's that Dada? Who is that man? Who's that? Who's that? What is that? You did baby panda sleep back and then leave him the bar that I made that I got him. Wow. It's a bar. No. Did you feed him the donut? Going back to the donut shop. Mommy, you feed him you feed him the bar that I got baby panda. I'll go to supermarket with Elmo. Mommy, it's Max. This mess that you made.
What is it?
Maybe I'm going to die. Because it's die. That's good. I'm going to do that. I need it.
What's good?
What is harmony? What is harmony? What is harmony? What is harmony? I could go on and on and on, each time asking the question in a different way, with a different intent, with a different underlying presumption of what an answer might be. Even though the words are the same, the question can be different every time. But that's not quite right. That's not what I mean. I don't mean to say I could go on. Don't I mean something else? Don't I mean one could go on and on, repeating, multiplying and multiplying.
3 years ago.
No. One is not
years
right
ago.
either. The generic, singular, universal as in. What about we? We could go on and on and on. But no.
I started walking again.
That's the point, isn't it? There is no we.
After a long and
But let me say this. Harmony covers a wide range of categories, which include sentiments such as happy, sad,
complicated
dark,
recovery
and mysterious. So when we call upon the spirit of harmony in a thing such as, say, racial harmony, which harmonic spirit are we calling?
complicated recovery.
Or rather, what is the perception of harmony when we think of such an instance relating to multiculturalism? When we think of harmony, it is useful to think of it as complex relations between ideas, and not just the idea that if everyone is happy or not fighting, we've achieved harmony. Yay! Harmony isn't monophonic. In fact, I dare say harmony is monophobic. Harmony is in fact polyphonic.
The reason I don't say blessed,
containing multiple voices, that is where I suppose I'm most fascinated in stretching this frame of harmony, where multiple voices, ingredients come together to create a new object or a new body.
on occasion, but when it all, I have had a very lucky life.
And in how multiple voices coexist and come together
Just dumb.
is the subject of a process I'm obsessive with, and that is intimacy. How different voices become intimate with one another.
But I'm not. Look, on wood.
In Malay or Bahasa Melayu, intimacy can be transliterated to the word intim, which means pretty much what you'd understand of the English word intimacy. But there is also another word that's used to describe intimacy as we currently understand it. The word is Muslim.
And I say lucky, not blessed.
Masra represents joyousness or closeness between two people, a state of happiness or shared relations. But in the culinary arts, Masra represents a state of absorption or blending.
Diverse and disparate stories.
When addressing how different ingredients mix together, much like making pancake batter, Masra is used to suggest a new state of consistency. Quite often, Gaul Sampai Masra is often used to say to mix ingredients until you get a particular or specific consistency. I too like trouble. The poetics of the Malay language teaches me that intimacy, joyousness, closeness, and a state of being together is an act of transformation. It is a process of absorbing and changing the state of two bodies into a new one. In other words, harmony is a byproduct of intimate agents coming together. When we observe a harmonic motif, we are observing kemesraan, an act of intimacy. The we presumes a we, and just because there are many here, it doesn't mean we are a we. The many are not we. The many are here asking the question many times in many different ways, and as the many ask, as many more join in to ask, multiplying and multiplying, diversifying and diversifying, on and on and on. Perhaps even in what might be called harmony, the many ask. And all I can do is hear that many are asking, maybe even in harmony. Though whose definition of harmony, I ask, though it's not just me asking, many more are asking too. What is harmony? Asking, and as the many ask, I remind myself, do not presume that this many comprise a we. I tell myself again and again, try to hear the many as the many as the many, and then me ask, what is harmony? Our machine kins. Our intimacy with machine is precisely that, how we've reacted, absorbed, transformed, and altered parts of ourselves and our machines to reach a new state or body all together. In the wake of our current pandemic, our machine selves have become increasingly busy, passing and plowing through volumes of data, network service, and profiles for the interest of sustaining our physical, mental, and emotional selves in this potentially claustrophobic and confining times. If it's any consolation, our machine selves are spared of this virus, but not our physical selves. For some of us, and in some instances, parts of our machine selves are already automated, either responding or reacting to other cues and prompts virtually, almost as if a part of us are spared from the pandemic. But for most of us, self-automation isn't a reality we've had access to. Many of my closest friends and family are artists and musicians, and almost everyone have lost jobs since. But lost opportunities aside, the current survival guide and strategy for many of these has more to do with how we can further become Masra with one another, sustaining bodies through shared resources, and developing new ecologies for our cyborgian futures. How can our machine self resuscitate our wetwares? Almost as if it were an overriding prompt to protect us, to care for us. I am not interested in when this chaos will resolve, but what new strategies and politics are needed to fight for new horizons that is far more distributed in the way we breathe, live easy, and with dignity.
Recovery.
When we find a resolve for this chaos, I hope to be part of this new microcosmology, where the focus is less generative, more narrative,
But I must
where interactions
say,
are intimate in order to transform one another.
I have had a very lucky life.
Aku susah hati pasal
Knock on wood.
depan.
And I say lucky.
Intimacy is no longer just about being close to someone or just a sense of familiarity. Intimacy or masra is about transformation with care. It is about blending and absorbing one another to become something else. Much like encryption, where information entangles itself with an algorithm to develop or reach a new state or body, hopefully impenetrable. No future should be void of intimacy.
Aku susah hati lah pasal masa depan.
Okay, that was a new machine and human generated video work titled Trouble with Harmony. And the humans involved were Lee Weng Choi, an art critic based in Kuala Lumpur, who writes on contemporary art and culture in Southeast Asia, a very prolific writer, and also Bani Haykal, who's an artist and composer and musician, works on ideas of cybernetics, intimacy, as we've seen, and also obviously harmony. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Bani, are you here? Could we maybe trouble you to say a few words, say hello at least?
Hi, Bani.
Yes, thank you for listening, and thank you for having us as well.
You know, it's very provocative the way you put you say that work was human and machine generated. I mean, that's sort of been obviously a theme throughout the program this evening. Could you just say a few words without giving the game away totally, about maybe about the process of that work? Say something about what we were watching or listening to.
Yeah, so the text component, which was something that Weng Choi and I have been working on, we've been corresponding for a period of time, and some of these texts we collected and eventually informed the main text that we've been hearing, both in the narrative and also the choral work. The choral work was done between Weish, a singer from Singapore as well, and myself, where we gave vocal samples of us responding to some of these graphic scores. And the graphic scores are the images that you see on the video itself, which was generated through machine learning. And so we responded to that alongside the text that Wing and I have been writing. And all that kind of goes into my Momo, or the machine that I've written, which then structures. So basically the final music that you hear was actually arranged or organized by the program, or the patch that I wrote.
Amazing. Oh, go on, Joel.
I was just going to say, Barney, could you just say something about the ideas around intimacy that you're working with, and also the kind of influence of Malay culture on the work?
Sure. So I think like a lot of my work does come from examining our present and also, thinking about the future through like initially from the concept of time within, say, Malay culture, or at least from the Malay language. It all started with the fact that, we don't have a specific word for the word future, but we have a very specific word for the day after tomorrow. So concepts of time through language was what was fascinating for me. And when thinking about, this idea of, how we sort of like evolve or grow together, both, across species, but specifically with our personal computers or with our machines, both private and public, this frame of intimacy became a kind of useful frame, but English wasn't enough to define what this relationship or what this sort of like intimacy that we have. And within Malay language, that's where this, most of my work and what the video sort of like tends to spell out, which is that Mesra is ultimately utilized to suggest a kind of transformation, a process where two different ingredients or bodies come together to produce or to become something new. And so I guess having that allows me to think about how we develop new tools, how we go forward in the interest of changing or evolving together with these tools of ours.
Thank you so much, Barney, and thank you to Lee Weng Choi for that incredible work. It was so enjoyable to see and to listen to, and I can hear some distant synthesizer tones, which is often the wrap-up music. It means that we're moving on to the next section. So I think we're getting ready to welcome the phantom guitarist, and here she is.
In this YouTube video, a woman plays guitar with an artificial intelligence. The computer listens and responds. Once again, we find ourselves in a version of Yershov's diagram. It's almost as if she's having a conversation with the AI. She plays, and it listens and responds. She listens to its response and plays some more. This improvised conversation is like the exchange between scientists and aliens in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It might be playful, or may be antagonistic. We don't and can't know the meaning, even if we could participate in the dialogue. The woman playing the guitar also created the alien AI that she improvises with. Still, she can't know the meaning of what it says or what she says in response. The fact that she can't know the meaning and she can't know what response her playing will provoke is precisely what excites her. She wants to create things that she can't quite control. She doesn't play her AI the way she might play a piano or her guitar. She plays with it. This woman and this AI and this amateurish video are part of a research project called Musica, short for Musical Interactive Collaborative Agent. The project is funded by DARPA, US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which also funded some of the early breakthroughs in automatic speech recognition beginning in the 1970s. Musica is part of DARPA's Communicating with Computers program. It has two parts. One is called Composition by Conversation, and the other, Jazz and Musical Improvisation. So the question is, why? Why is DARPA into jazz? Why is it so interested in machines that improvise? What does it think it will learn? What does DARPA imagine improvisation will help it do? The contemporary battlefield is nonlinear. It's often urban. Commanders no longer concentrate their forces along one line or at one point, but disperse them into a 360-degree battlefield. The individual soldier might experience anxiety, even a sense of isolation. They don't simply follow orders, but communicate and flexibly coordinate with other isolated, anxious soldiers. They improvise. Soldiers improvise with each other, but also with intelligent machines. Another project by the same research group teaches AIs how to infer the internal states of their human teammates, solving problems collaboratively with them, and communicating with them in a socially aware manner. The practice stage here is Minecraft, where soldiers in training can enter a besieged village, fight a zombie, and are invited to intermittently reflect on their emotional state. Many actors of seemingly different politics have an ideological and tactical investment in improvisation. Improvisation as freedom, improvisation as multi-dominance, improvisation as counter-hegemony, the opposite of control. Matin has written about the supposedly self-inherent critical potential of improvisation. And he points instead to the way that improvisers embody the precarious qualities of contemporary labor. This is improvisation as corporate agility, improvisation as 0 hours contracts, improvisation as moving fast and breaking things. The ability to go off script, off score, to innovate in the moment with what's at hand becomes a way of both accumulating capital and surviving in this labor market. Evidently for DARPA, improvisation is also the future of combat. So that it is keen to mine the communicative virtuosity of jazz improvisation for whatever secrets it may hold. In addition to jazz robots, DARPA has two other programs, Improv and Improv 2, in which hobbyists or research labs pretending to be hobbyists try to create military-grade weapons using readily available software and off-the-shelf technology. Improvisation is both a technique and a generative source of knowledge to extract. But one thing DARPA's improv program manager says reminds us that their improvisational imaginary has real constraints. DARPA's in the surprise business, and part of our goal is to prevent surprises. In time, there's no more need for human input in the ensemble. The machine improvises with itself.
How positive are you feeling about the mission right now? Answers in the chat, please. You're tuned in to Machine Listening, Improvisation and Control. Thank you, Sean, and thank you to Donya, the guitarist, improvising throughout that last piece. We're now going to move into the next segment of today's program, and would like to welcome Bridget Chappell to the program. I'm looking off screen at Bridget because they're right here with me. Bridget, if you'd like to turn on and say hello. And Bridget's collaborator, Alison Walker, is also here. I'm not sure if Alison will be seen, but she'll certainly be heard throughout the piece. And there she is. So Bridget is a Melbourne-based artist and musician working in a number of different ways across experimental music, activism, art, working on stolen land. And they've produced some really incredible works at the kind of intersection of experimental music and activism. And this is a new one. It's called Extreme Deep Listening. So I'd like to hand it over to you now, Bridget, and to Alison.
Thanks, Joel. Sometimes I'm in the middle of an activity that I'm enjoying, that I'm compelled to stop because I hear a siren. That annoying little shit, it's not even a cop, just the distant sound of one. They've outsourced to us via this iconography. When we hear it, we morph unthinkingly into the most law-abiding versions of ourselves. It's funny how us hearing them makes us think they can see us. This disembodied imperative voice, it's a lazy flex. Probably the only thing I like about them is what a good shorthand they are for the Doppler effect. They induce a state of alarm with connections to increased risk of cardiovascular arrest and hearing loss. They make you feel anxious as fuck, bro, and so are the most effective self-policers out. Trad sirens, meanwhile, those Greek chicks who lured you to your untimely death at sea, seem almost like an oppositional response to that, like they're compelling you to take more risks in your life, not less. Someone else looked it up for me, so I don't have to. And Plato said that there were three kinds of sirens: the celestial, the generative, and the purificatory or cathartic, assigned to Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, respectively. When the soul is in heaven, the sirens seek, by harmonic motion, to unite to the divine life of the celestial host, and when in Hades, to conform the soul to eternal, infernal regimen. On earth, their only job is to produce generation, of which the sea is emblematic. How then did we get locked into this siren underworld? I've read the Wikipedia articles. I still don't really understand how sirens ended up as a so-called public address system. For a noise artist, I'm extremely sound sensitive. Yeah, you can call me a snowflake. I only want to be corroded if I'm the one doing it or subjecting myself to it willfully. This is, of course, how I came around to deep listening, sound artist Pauline Oliveris's principles of radical attentiveness that encourage us to open up to the magic of everyday sounds and their impact on the body. As a practice, it has many uses as a form of meditation, a group activity, an exercise to commence a creative work, blah, blah, blah. I live in a loud world of little agency, so I probably use it most as a coping strategy. I got to thinking, though, that maybe its warm, fuzzy principles could be applied as a type of psychoacoustic challenge to the siren. It's not all that practical to mute it in literal terms, but could we challenge its trigger response to self-police by willfully exposing ourselves to it in a controlled environment? So please join me in a few short exercises of what we could call extreme deep listening. Exercise 1. We're going to listen to some sirens. Try and pay attention to how your body responds to them. Are you blinking more? Are your eyes moving? Check your heart rate now and then. Are you sweating? You can also think about where they take you mentally. What can you remember? What can you expect to happen next? All right. Now we're going to try and perform some simple, unhurried tasks while listening to sirens. Pick one of the following. Brush your teeth, braid your hair, make a cup of tea, or build a playlist while listening to sirens. Allison. All right, exercise 3. Try to listen to this YouTube video while the sirens are playing. Can you focus on what he is saying? Can you count how many times he says the word cop? We're going to chuck the link to the YouTube video in the Zoom chat right now, so you can just open that up and hit play. Oh, Joel. Allison. Allison. All right, final exercise. We're going to download some cracked software while listening to sirens. Nothing like piracy to simulate the adrenaline of breaking the law. Access the Pirate Bay however you like. For example, the Opera web browser has a built-in VPN if you don't have one, so you can just type it straight into the navigation bar. When you get there, just please search for Ableton 11 Windows Crack. Sick. Thanks so much to Alison Walker and Joel Stern for all of their help with that. If you've enjoyed or at least withstood these exercises or found them useful, feel free to take them out into the world. If you're in Nam and would like to connect offline with like-minded humans, please feel free to come to the launch of my exhibition No Comment at Blindside next Thursday, co-presented with Liquid Architecture, which explores a lot of bullshit that you've just witnessed. Or hit me up for a chat. I like pen pals. Thank you.
As a late teenager, I went to my first all-night raves. In them, I was lifted from the greyness of conservative England and into the long-form sensory overload of hours and hours of loud, repetitive sound created by humans interacting with electronic machines. Some years later, I remembered back to these times and distinctly recall being lay in bed the next morning and hearing melodies, loops and fragments of music which I was replaying somehow inside my head. It seems there had been a transfer of information from the club and into my own neuronal system. I wondered whether these loops were real. Was I replaying these things I'd heard, or was my brain recreating new loops based on ones it had heard and was now encoding them as musicalized hallucination? Had I learned these phrases? Were they echoes? Were they mine? Like listening itself, memory is an odd, elusive and psychedelic thing.
Were you, albeit delusionally?
Around the start of the 2010s, I made a series of records that thought about musical memory, reimagining, sound hallucination, and simulation. One record in particular, Dutch Tvashar Plumes from 2012, dealt specifically with the idea of these short, hallucinated fragments of electronic sound. The sound design task I set myself for creating Tvashar was to invoke the music you bring back inside your skull and not the music that you were listening to in the rave hours before.
Sounds emit themselves into your subconscious as hallucinated, repetitive, non-audible sound events in the realm of simulated illusion.
When the brain is starved of a stimulation it has been accustomed to, it can respond by attempting to simulate the real world. In this case, involuntary musical imagery. These types of memory or simulations are called echoic memory, or in visual terms, you'd call them release hallucinations. But what are their function, if any? Are they useful? How are they encoded? Why do we create simulations anyhow? Perhaps there is a subconscious impulse to take these heard moments and freeze them, eternalize them, if only for a moment. Is there something particular in the nature of electronic music and sound that allows us to store these phonological loops? Or do these simulations occur in other parts of life also?
Could your brain simulate the sound of a motorway? Could your brain simulate the sound of the sea? Could your brain simulate the sound of everyone else?
Jumping a few years ahead, and I find myself working and thinking with another type of simulating technology in AI, neural networks, and machine learning. How can I utilize them as tools in my work, think about what they're doing, and how they operate with us, for us, and on us?
Are they connected to other forms of simulation? Do neural networks have a memory? How do they store information?
We can think about musical hallucination as the act of listening to a memory, or
listening to a simulation.
In a similar way, neural networks learn how to learn, and learn how to predict and simulate the next nanosecond of reality based on a specific dataset of information from the world. Both an audio hallucination and a deep learning model are virtual experiences, representations of reality that may or may not be entirely accurate, but whose functions are to extract data, filter it, and build a new model of reality, a simulation. In biological memory, we store sound in a neurological buffer known as echoic memory. This buffer is reported to be around 3 to 15 seconds long. Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, known as GPT-3, is a third-generation autoregressive deep learning language model built by artificial intelligence company OpenAI. It's by far the largest neural network ever trained, with around 175 billion trainable parameters. For context, the second largest model today is Microsoft's Turing NLG, which has around 17 billion. GPT-3 has no form of memory or recurrence in a traditional sense. What it does have is a context window of approximately 500 to 1,000 words.
I guess this is where GPT-3 experiences it now.
Although not an echoic memory as such, GPT-3's context window is similarly small. And as incredibly powerful as this model is, this is a limitation for its ability to write anything at serious length. But where the format is repetitive, like questions and answers, this small context window is less of a limitation. I know my brain can simulate a short, repetitive, machinic musical phrase. And GPT-3's context window also limits it to dealing with repetition more easily. In 2020, physicist Vitaly Vanchurin produced a paper titled "The World as a Neural Network," in which he considers, quote, the possibility that a microscopic neural network is the fundamental structure and everything else, i.e. quantum mechanics, general relativity, and macroscopic observers emerge from it, end quote. So, to get back to Earth somewhat, I can summarise by asking the same questions about how audio hallucinations build realities for us to observe by asking again,
could a neural network have simulated the sound of that motorway? Could a neural network have simulated the sound of that sea? Could a neural network have simulated the sound of every 1 hour?
Wow, that was so great. Just wanted to give it a moment or two, a few beats to gather my thoughts. That was a new work by the UK artist Lee Gamble. It was called Head Models on Rave Simulation, Involuntary Musical Imagery, Machine Learning, Neural Networks and Hallucination. I mean, I know Lee's work from his records, his extensive work as a musician, on loads of amazing labels like Pan, Hyperdub, and in his own imprint. I think I first came across him via Diversions and Kosh or Koch. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but I gather that's Lee. Can we get you on? Are you there? Hey, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, I was just, it was so great to hear you working with, the ideas of, the brain as machine as, we've both got this Yershoff diagram behind us, and there's a kind of complete equivalence between the machine here and the brain. It's hard to distinguish them. And I'm also minded of the fact that I've got concussion at the moment. And one of the symptoms of concussion is audio sensitivity. And I'm quite conscious of the susceptibility of my own brain and hearing apparatus to things like sirens and the kind of, bass music, club music, and, just not being fully in control of your own auditory apparatus. So no, that was great. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for hosting it. Yeah.
What's been the impact of a lifetime of listening to loud club music on your brain?
Me, I have no idea. I guess I don't know. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know. I also remember back to before when I was a real small kid. My family are from a kind of building background and factory, and my granddad had a factory for a while. So when I was really small, in a kind of pram, I used to spend time in a factory. So a whole day would be hearing these factory noises as well. So yeah, I blame it for a lot of my musical interpretations and my musical interests and likes, I guess. Yeah, I guess my ability to kind of listen to extreme kind of music may have come from being in the pram in a factory or something. I don't know.
And am I right that that's not just your first audio essay, but also the debut of Moz? Is that
yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's a kind of it's a voice clone that I've kind of well, I haven't really built. I guess is part of the question of this whole panel, right? I haven't really built it. I've just trained it on my voice, and yeah, it kind of does a pretty decent approximation of my voice. So I thought, when you asked me to be invited to this and involved to this, I just kind of I'd had this kind of thing rattling around my head, this kind of idea of simulation and this stuff I was doing in the early 2010, 11, 12, 13. There was kind of thinking about hallucination and musical imagery and things like that, and then also like more currently with like kind of neural nets and stuff, and it just seemed to kind of like they just seem to link together quite well. They just seem to make a lot of sense to me if you put them under the idea of simulation as opposed to like technologies that seem different from, like, you know, this is a kind of neurological thing that's happening, a technology if you like, and then there's a very specific set of technological opportunities now with AI more broadly. But like, so I just thought they just seemed to really connect, and it was nice to kind of revisit stuff I'd made a few years ago and kind of make it sort of feel fresh again to me in some way. So yeah, it was kind of that's why I did it, and then the voice thing just made sense because I needed to narrate it. I didn't really want to do it myself, but I kind of just did, and then thought, yeah, it'd be nice to have this kind of thing questioning me, or questioning me with my own questions, something like that. Yeah, it gets not only this feedback loop, it gets more Ouroboros, you could say, than that. I guess it gets really strange. And in the end of that essay, there was this piece I found by this physicist called Vitaly Vanchurin, who has written this paper. That kind of poses the idea that the world is a neural network. The universe is a microscopic neural network, which of course is a speculative paper, but he's a physicist, so he's done some deep math on it. But it's kind of like somewhere between. Yeah. Anyway, go and read the paper if you can. It's full of maths if you can do that. But it's interesting just to think about in terms of these kind of cycles and these spirals that you get with, you know, this idea of deep learning being this thing that we teach it to respond back to us. Yeah, if his proposal is true, then the neural networks are built from a neural network, which is another confusing. Yeah, I don't even know what the word is for that.
You might even call it extreme deep math.
Yeah, I guess it just I suppose you could. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'd just be interesting to use that as a kind of mirror, right? At the end, just to say, well, yeah, maybe these things that we're building from neural networks are already built from neural networks. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Lee. It was really great. And I really hope you continue to work in the medium. And I know you might be developing some stuff with Unsound later in the year or something. It'd be really great to see where that work goes.
Sure. It's been it's just, I'd like to kind of embed myself in things for a while before I start to like play with them properly. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And you know what we thought we'd do now, that's actually takes us through to the final performance. That was the final performance of today's session. And Lee, I know you've just dropped off and turned your camera off, but what we thought we'd do now is just invite all of the artists who are still with us, you know, watching and tuning in to turn their cameras on if they'd like to. And it'd be really great to, you know, be able to see you all and thank you all, because it's been an amazing couple of hours. It's been great to share this project with you, and it's always incredible to have the opportunity to invite artists to respond to ideas or to kind of you know, approach people with these concepts, and many of you, of course, already exploring them in incredible ways, and then to share the works with you. It's so rewarding. We also wanted to invite our partners at Unsound, Matt and Gosha, if you're there, and also at NTU, Centre for Contemporary Art Singapore, Karen and Magda and Uta, if you're there as well, to switch on. It's kind of the time for, you know, thank yous and goodbyes in a minute, but I can see you there, Magda, and yeah, we should thank the Liquid Architecture team as well, especially Lauren Squire, who's been producing.
Your camera on, Lauren.
Yeah, turn your camera on. Who's produced this whole session and the other machine listening sessions at Unsound in October. Isaiah, who's here, who's been handling the live stream onto Facebook and YouTube, and amazing crew, Liquid Architecture team, Elisa Blakeney, who has been running the chat room throughout this whole session, putting links in and keeping everyone informed, Debris Facility, Georgia Hutchison, Liang Luscombe, Zoe DeLuca, all crew who've worked on this project to make it possible. And is Uta with us here? I'm not sure if I can see her in the chat, but
I am.
You are there, Uta.
I am here.
Oh wow! And you've got an amazing blended background. You look like you're floating in space there. So I mean, this project came about, this episode came about from your generous invitation to us to make a work, as part of the Free Jazz 3, third version of Free Jazz at NTU CCA. So, and we're also, it was amazing opportunity to explore for us this history, including the history at MIT Media Lab. And I know you've got also a long history of involvement there too. So it's amazing to have had this opportunity, and just wanted to invite you, to say a few words too.
I think I walked to a more quiet space. Speaking of interferences, I hope you hear me now better. Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. Really, Joel and everybody. I mean, I really want to thank Sean Dockeray, James Parker, and also our former curator in residence, Joel. I mean, it has been amazing to have you with us. And this is also, I think, where this discussion started on maybe joining forces. And you were so generously inviting us into your project. So it's kind of like a back and forth invitation. And I just want to say that we were very pleased to kick off Free Jazz last year by supporting Liquid Architecture's online session convened in early October for Unsound 2020 in Mission Krakow, Poland, as part of Machine Listening, a curriculum. And we find it wonderfully fitting that we are also closing Free Jazz 3 today with this online session curated by Liquid Architecture. And really, it has been an amazing project, very inspiring, and it also shows there are other formats in which we can work, because some of you know that we just lost our exhibition space and our kind of like cinema and our laboratory, but we continue in a different way. But Joel, I was quite taken to hear you referring to MIT's Media Lab and its role in machine listening. And as you mentioned, MIT is the place where Karen and I spent years prior to Singapore. And who came immediately to my mind is the late electro and psychoacoustic pioneer and composer, Marianne Amache, a longtime fellow during your CAPES directorship at the Center for Advanced Visual Studies, CAVS, and her experimentation with autoacoustics. Marianne was a partner of Marvin Minsky, founder of MIT's AI laboratory, quite interesting, and her influence on him requires indeed some exploration. I would also like to thank all of you for being part of this session. I'm joining here Joel and the Liquid Architecture team, because it was really, as I said before, very inspiring, and it's highlight of our event. But I also was very taken to close Free Jazz kind of as a link to our first edition of Free Jazz that was presented at the center by myself and the inaugural CCA team that included Li Weng Choi, our former deputy director designee, as well as Barney Haikal, who both performed just now, and Barney way back performed as part of OFCAF together with Ila, Mohammad Ridoun, and Wu Yun Han at our inauguration in October 2013. I also was amazed to see Luca Lum, and it's very interesting because Joel and Luca continued their conversation since their paths first crossed at NTU-CCA, I think it was in 2018. And as I said, free chess began initially as a form of inquiry and as an active tool to generate new possibilities for conceptualizing and programming an art institution in a country that introduced the ban on performance in 1994. So we really thought, like, what can you do if you have to give your performance script prior to performing to kind of like a review to state authorities? And we discussed then that what would you do in free chess? Free chess is about improvisation. There is no score. There is nothing to give. And still it is a format. So this is also when we continue to explore this possibility defined by collaboration, resistance, and masterful improvisation. I really want to thank also at this moment Magdalena Magiera, our curator outreach and education, and Dr. Karen Oehn, our deputy director curator programs, who curated Free Chess Free. And I would also highlight their work on sound walks that featured commissions by artists Tini Aliman, Aramayani, Krista Donner, and Andrew Young, Cheryl Ong, Angie Sia, and Vivian Wang. And you can actually, if you're interested, access those works on our website until March 28th. Yeah, I just really want to thank everybody. And as this is kind of an end of our more public phase of the CCA, I also want to thank our supporters, our artists, our collaborators, our visitors, as well as our stakeholders, NTU, the Economic Development Board, and the National Arts Council of Singapore, who have made our programs possible, including this one, since our inauguration. And yeah, we look forward to the future, and I hope Joel and everybody, there might be also a continued conversation with you guys. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Uta. That was such a generous way to end this program, and yeah, it means a lot to us to be able to work together at this moment in your institution, and we wish you all the luck for what comes next, and you know that it should be experimental, and it should be you know, inspiring in all sorts of unexpected and improvisational ways. So I think we're about to sign out, but maybe James, if you want to, we could just say something about what's next for this project for machine listening.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe we should throw the it's just been done, the curriculum link back in the. You know, we're trying to produce not just events, but a resource or. You know, that includes writings, a library, documentation of all these works. We've got an experiments section that kind of, you know, includes sort of things like instructional scores for you to go and experiment with yourself. And you know, you can have a little play around. We're going to keep developing that, and hopefully in partnership with a number of different institutions. So, for example, we've got a sort of a project in development at the moment called Capture All, which is with Sarai Institute and some great curators there. And we'll be working with Unsound in 2021 again. And yeah, just continuing to develop the resource and growing, hopefully, the group of thinkers and artists and activists who are working in this area of machine listening. I mean, you know, it's not like, you know, we're doing the research live with you and together with everybody. So, you know, it's we think of it as a collaborative project that we hopefully can keep growing with everyone. Did I say everything I was meant to say?
Yep. Shall we sign off then?
Let's do it.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
It was a real pleasure. And we appreciate everybody turning up in Zoom as well.
Yeah. Yep. So is the panelists? Okay.